Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Adam, Content Marketing Specialist with Henry Schein, and I'll be your moderator. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we will cover as many as we can at the end of the webinar. Please make sure that your volume is up and any large applications are closed on your computer or mobile device to ensure a smooth connection. This webinar is presented by Henry Schein Dental, and no CE credits are being offered for viewing today's presentation. I'm pleased to welcome back Dr. Jonathan Levine, a renowned dentist and prosthodontist in practice for nearly 30 years. Thank you, Dr. Levine, for being with us today. Take it away.
Well, Am, thank you. Thanks for organizing and having me back with Andrea. Thank you to Andrea. It's a pleasure to be here to share thinking that has developed over the last 25 plus years. The digital workflow and digital dentistry and this new technology can be very overwhelming. So what I'd like to do in the next 45 minutes is to review the fundamentals of aesthetic and functional dentistry as it relates mostly to aesthetics, and really to see how we can integrate kind of our digital workflow into the whole design. So from scanning, designing to manufacturing, to make things more efficient and more effective. So that's my goal. We use the expression that digital dentistry is not going to make you a great dentist. A continuous learning and constant studying of the fundamentals will. And based on these fundamentals of what we do in these building blocks, we layer in this new technology, whatever new technology is coming down, whether it's a laser or it's a new scanner or it's a new CAD/CAM machine, there's an opportunity to make us better than we were without it and more efficient. So let me take us a little bit about what I do. I'm involved in a couple different things. Just to give you context, our practice, we call JBL New York City. We have about 24, 25 people. I've started a couple different companies. Glow Science is one of them. We have whitening therapeutic products, and then we have a foundation that really builds culture for my practice and for the people who come on our missions, and most of them are in Eleuthera these days, and very involved with my alma maters, both NYU PG Pros, and where I've been an associate professor and help run the advanced aesthetics program, and Boston University. But before I really jump in, I want to just share with everybody on this the concept of Ikigai. And Ikigai is a very interesting thing. And having done dentistry and been in the profession and in an entrepreneurial bent within our profession, this resonates for me. And I want to share it with everybody. I'd love you to kind of pick it up. But it's an interesting concept. It's the reason for being. It's the Japanese call the reason for being, Ikigai. And it's where what you're passionate about, what you're really, really good at, what you get paid for, and what the world needs, where that all comes together. That's your purpose. And I think it's a great thing to think about, because as professionals, we're so focused on the care of our patients and building our team and our practice and working collaboratively with other specialists, and then balancing that with life. I think it's just a great concept for us to embrace. So it's a great read. Really great read. Here's my team. Most of everybody, many of them we've been together a couple of decades and a half, and especially the guys with the whiter hair, and it's a great team. I'm very blessed. Paula with the pearls, who's still in Finland, coming back in a few weeks, was my first dental assistant. I believe deeply in building culture and continuous learning and challenging each other and hold each other accountable to build a great team. Let me show you a little bit about the practice, just to give you some idea of what our patients, when they come in, what they see. What you're seeing is a motivational mock-up from a design, a 3D printed model. I'll show you that today. And then showing the patient kind of what she can expect. We get this excited, emotional feeling from our patients, which goes a long way. It's so much easier than having to talk about things. We can show them, and then we can get that feedback, of course, as that first move of testing our idea and our hypothesis. So we'll talk quite a bit. But first, I want to tell you about my patient, Lenny, who, when I came back from Africa on a mission with our foundation, our Glow Good Foundation, he says, "Doc, you got to come help my people." "Where's your people, Lenny?" He says, "In Eleuthera." And I go down to Eleuthera with my wife, and there's Stace, and we're checking out the people there. I'm realizing that they have rampant decay, periodontal disease, no access to care. I said, "Lenny, we're coming back." And we did come back. And we've gone back for the last 5 years. Last December 9th, we were there with 110 people. And here's a quick little video. And it's something that I believe that as hard as we work, we can do well and do good and do well at the same time. Is very exciting. I have folks there from my aesthetic program and my practice. And there's Lenny.
This community is my home. My people here be able to have the care that they should have, that every human being should have. And I've been very fortunate to find partners with Dr. Levine and his wife Stacy, and we have an amazing family, the whole Glow Good team.
We would drive around in his Jeep and just ask people on the road. He would know them. And we saw that they needed the most basic care. So we teamed up our organizations, the Glow Good Foundation and Lenny's Let Love Rule.
Giving them access to dentistry, giving them access to the education about how to take better care of their oral health. We have the ability, one place at a time, to really make a difference.
And hopefully we'll be back in January when things calm down. But I show this because when I go down there, I'm so proud of our profession, what we do, how we change people's lives. And it's truly inspiring to see the people that come down there. A lot of the concepts we're going to go over right now, you can get this book on Amazon if you enjoy what I'm talking about. But Smile Design and what we do, and have a number of great writers, did chapters, Dr. Jeff McClendon, my partner here, Newton Cardoza, Dr. Frank Salenza did our aligners. But, you know, what we believe is that there's an integration, of course, of aesthetics and function. And we've tried to develop protocols and systems so that we can do that very efficiently. So that's what we cover in the book, Aesthetic Dentistry. So dentistry, it's a new day, and it's a tremendous platform for innovation, as we are all seeing it. And it's moving very quickly. It's moving quickly where we have the ability to scan, design, and manufacture, whether it's aligners, which we make our own aligners in the office, whether it's night guards, whether it's restorations, one-day restorations, or inlays and crowns. And we have my two ceramists who've been with me over 20, 24 years. We do a lot of EMAX and zirconium, and of course, implant pros. We work as a team. So we have 2 digital technicians and 3 more of on the analog side. But it is a wonderful platform for innovation. It's a very exciting day. So when we think about it, and I ask the question, well, what do you do? You know, what exactly do, you know, we do? We have an option, and we figured this out kind of 15, 20 years ago, because we could just be focused on fixing teeth, but we really could be focused on transforming people's lives and transforming their smiles, whether we're making a denture, implant reconstruction, ceramic veneers, or just getting our patients healthy because they have periodontal disease. We can transform people's lives and their smiles, and we can make them healthier. And that's the place I think we all want to be. So we're living through this digital revolution. We really are. And as we went, and in my own practice, we still live in analog, which is you waxing up for EMAX. We also live in a digital world. So we're kind of somewhere in the middle of those. And when you compare the two, it's very interesting. You can see some of the advantages of digital. But the bottom line is we want to maximize the aesthetic and functional potential by doing digital. And what I mean by that is when we can do digital, we can really be copying natural tooth form. Okay, we can be scanning natural tooth form. We're using that natural tooth form both for smile design and single restorations. Both can give us facially driven treatment planning. We've been doing facially driven treatment planning for 20 years plus in aesthetic dentistry. But the interdisciplinary and the communication is better. And the integration of aesthetic and functions when you're working with ceramists that understand the software, the digital workflow is very impressive. The natural tooth form advantage over a technician just waxing from their imagination is levels above, as we can copy exactly natural tooth form and concept we call smile donated. That hopefully I'll show you that case that we did that. The traditional technician we know, it's magnificent veneers we can do, felspathic, layered, but the communication is somewhat analog. You don't have as much control of the collaborative approach like you have in the digital world. And combinations of these two also works. It doesn't have to be one or the other, because very specific cases still, I believe, get handled extremely well in an analog world, but we might smile design the case digitally, okay? Or we're doing the aligners digitally. So it's a combination, but it's the concept of scanning, designing, and manufacturing, and going from the physical articulator to a virtual one or a digital one. Great. So the learning objectives that I want to go through in the next 40 minutes is really to show you how we think about integration of aesthetics and function. This is a concept that my partner in crime here, Dr. Jeff McClendon, we've been together for 25 years, and he's at the aesthetic program. I handed the program off to Mike Delizio, who's did an amazing job there for the last year and a half. Got, of course, blocked by COVID, but they'll be back. But a lot of the concepts that came out of what we call the feline, the functional aesthetic edge, came out of the collaboration of Dr. Mack and myself. This three-step analysis is something I've been working on, and it's very Peter Dawsonian, who for many of us are mentors of the three-step analysis and this aesthetic evaluation form we created as much as 25 years ago. We're at version 7. And then we're going to look at the digital revolution and smile design and integrating digital workflow into our practices. So we like to call this the transdisciplinary approach. Medicine and dentistry is very siloed, either separate, but also within. And so we have to say to ourselves, how do we connect the dots, and how do we forecast where we want to go? How do we envision and visualize these cases and work backwards from that? Well, the person who I have unbelievable respect for and has been a mentor and a dear friend of mine is Rick Robley. And he wrote the book in '94, Interdisciplinary Dental Facial Therapy. It's still an incredible book today. Rick works in Fayetteville, Arkansas, constantly reinventing himself. And it's the ability to create software now that allows a platform of everybody talking to each other, which is truly exciting. There's definitely a paradigm shift going on. And the bottom line with digital dentistry is, like anything, we have to know our fundamentals. And we really start with kind of the philosophy of practice, of how we think of our practice. And we like to talk about structural and anatomical harmony, functional harmony, and of course, the biology, the optimum oral health, structure, function, and biology. We learned a lot of this, of course, in dental school and after at different levels of training. So when we look at, and this is from our book, but basically the concepts is from both Mark Brose and Dr. Lee, the concept of the biological model and the neutral zone from Earl Pound, and the musculature all coming together. We'll talk about this 4 millimeters of overbite, 2 millimeters of overjet, the biological model, because when you have worn teeth, we have to get back to some type of anchor that we can hold on to as we think of visualizing these cases, whether it's a diagnostic wax up from wax, or whether it's off of a digital wax up from your virtual articulator. Of course, the position of those teeth in the neutral zone of the lips and how the lips get supported by proper incisal ledge position, we're definitely going to be talking about throughout the next 35 minutes. So structure, function, biology in dental school, and when I went to dental school, that's what we learned. But there's a new way of thinking, and the new way of thinking is that structure and function biology is preceded by aesthetics. And that's what we talk about. This was a great concept originally from Frank Spear in 2006 and Dr. Lee. But we want to understand the most important tooth in the smile, which is the incisal edge of the central incisor. So let's talk about that a little bit more. The functional aesthetic edge or phi line is where it all comes together. You have the aesthetic surface, the facial surface, you have the phonetic surface, the incisal edge, and you have the functional palatal. And as you bring that together, that kind of linkage, we set up this phi line. So when we think about diagnostics, where we're always going is where is the incisal edge of the central incisor, because that's where everything comes together. So aesthetics drives our thinking, not structure function biology and then aesthetics, but aesthetics is really the first thing we do, and then we follow with structure function and structure function biology. So building a system for aesthetic predictability by doing a system and a process will build a necessary foundation for us to visualize these cases, figure out how to get where we're starting, identify where we are, and figure out the treatment plan to get there. Okay, so we very Peter Dorsonian and Pankey, and I was fortunate to be able to be exposed early on in my career after I did my prosthodontics. But you want to identify the problem, visualize where you want to go. So after you know where you are and know where you want to go, as Pete Dawson would always say, getting there is easy. You choose the appropriate technique. And the appropriate technique is always kind of the most conservative technique that fits our patient that we're customizing this for. And this sets the necessary foundation that we need to treat our patients at an extremely high level. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it with a systematic approach. Okay. And what I want to introduce to you is this concept that we first published this over 25 years ago, but it's this three-step analysis. And this three-step analysis basically takes us through an aesthetic evaluation form, which is a checklist. Go in a cockpit, you're driving a plane, flying a plane, excuse me, not driving a plane, flying a plane. You're going through a checklist. The same thing. We see our patients, whether it's a simple situation or more complicated situation, we go through our aesthetic evaluation form, which I'm going to show you. It's been published in about 4 or 5 places in the last 10 years, and also in our book, and in Steve Chu's book, and Goldstein's book in the beginning. So that's the aesthetic evaluation form. And then from that form, it allows us to identify the problem and figure out where's the gum line and where's the incisal edge, ideally, as it fits the face. This is all about facially generated treatment plan, because how high the smile is, what you're showing in relationship to the face and the dental facial structures, the lips and the teeth, is so critical to success. So we do a diagnostic wax up. We can do it analog through wax up, or we can do it now digitally. And then we want to show the patient what we're thinking. This is not a completed wax up, but this allows us to show the patient what we're thinking so we could share it with them, and most importantly, to get them excited. So identify the problem, aesthetic evaluation form, record gathering mounted models, or do it digitally. And here's the aesthetic evaluation form. It's gone on multiple iterations and new iterations the last year. But it basically asks some very important questions. And of course, this is very much in keeping with Dr. Ron Goldstein, which is asking open-ended effective questions. If there was anything you could change about your smile, what would it be? And then separate from that is to categorize our patients, because a lot of them have a vision of, hey, I want them perfect, or I want them very natural. And you want to figure that early on. And that really is very helpful as we think about what shade we're going to use for, let's say, the mock-up. Is it going to be very bleach-like color, or is it going to be maybe more in the 1M1 or B1 shade? We're going to have perfect imperfections of naturalness, or we're going to have more of perfect symmetry. So we like to help categorize this information. And as Goldstein was for the first question, Lloyd Miller, who was an amazing aesthetic dentist, I was fortunate to hear him at the Academy of Aesthetic Dentistry in the late 90s, came up with these questions. And they're really great. We put into the form. And then we do a facial analysis. We look at parallelism. We look at lips, full, thick, thin. We look at nasolabial angle, sideways. So is it a convex or concave profile? And allows us to generate this facially generated treatment plan. So lip at rest, we know that every decade, 40, 50 to 60, the lip falls a millimeter. So if we also know from Bill Arnett's work from the subnasally to the inferior border of the upper lip, you're about 18 to 22 millimeters. So now on the form, we're measuring the upper lips, and we want to know how much tooth exposure is there with the lip at rest. Well, if a person's at 30 and shows about 3 millimeters, Vic and Bruno study for a woman, and you have a 45, 48, 50-year-old that wants to look like a 30-year-old, we want to show that amount of tooth structure. And we have new concepts that we've developed here, but we want to understand where is that lip at rest. Because remember, through this aesthetic evaluation form, we're going to determine where's the gum line and where does the incisal edge go. Because from there, we're going to build everything. Okay, and then we look at smile line, and we look at facial aesthetics and symmetry and nasolabial and rickety plane. Then we take like a camera zooming in face, dental facial, and then dental. So we look at the teeth and the lips, high smile line, vertical horizontal components, buccal corridors, asymmetry versus symmetry, midline position, all of it. And it allows us to gather information that our technician needs. And then we also look at the micro aesthetic elements when needed. But the most important thing, which is coming up, is where are we going to put the gum line? And here's more of a micro aesthetic elements, and there's micro aesthetic element. But where are we going to put the gum, and where we're going to, the gingiva, and where we're going to put the incisal edge? And so how long is that tooth? And we do that, and I'll show you a number of cases. We do it with flowable right there, chair side. We measure with the digital caliper. And that information goes to our technician, whether for analog or for digital waxing. Great. So let me keep going. So now that we gathered the information, we know where the gingival margin is, we know where the incisal edge is going to be, so we know that what the tooth's going to be. Let's say it's going to be 10.5 millimeters. It's a high smile line. You don't want to go more than 10.5 millimeters. We're thinking to ourselves, okay, how are we going to visualize? And now the fun begins, because we've established the fee line. I'll show you cases where, you know, you're dealing with vertical dimension change and you got to get that biological model of overbite and overjet. But you're visualizing, let's say, a simple kind of position where you have a lot of worn incisal edge, and maybe you're going to do it with bonding off an index, or maybe you're going to do it with ceramic veneers or whatever. You won't really want to know where's that incisal edge going, but you want to build it in relationship to the facial aesthetic. Build it in relationship to facial aesthetics. And so at this point, I'm going to call out a colleague of mine who literally changed my life about how I think, especially as it relates to digital dentistry, digital workflow, and motivating our patient. And that is a gentleman, is a technician and a dentist from Brazil, from Sao Paulo. He's 7 generations of dentists, his father's father, and that's Christian Coachman, who has built a company called Digital Smile Design. I can't say enough about Christian. And about 4 or 5 years ago, him and I got to know each other and did some courses together, and I was able to integrate digital dentistry because of his impact, the huge impact. So you visualize, and then what you're looking at is a diagnostic wax up on the left side with wax, but then in the other ones, you're looking at smile design, regardless whether you're doing it analog with the benchtop technician waxing, or you're doing off a computer, so you're using, let's say, DSD software, and there's other softwares that you could be using. We're creating an index. And this index then allows us to mock that up in the mouth. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Once we can visualize and visualize with the patient, we take video and we show the patient, get them excited. Now we choose appropriate technique to get there. And oftentimes that's when the patient's excited and you figure out about what you're going to do, you can show them what you're doing. Now the real work starts, because now we're looking at more at full wax ups, whether it's virtual or whether it's analog, and really figuring out the occlusion. But the first thing we want to do is kind of figure out that aesthetics. Remember when we talked about aesthetics before structure, function, and biology. Great. So let's keep rocking. Now let me show some cases that are going to illustrate what we're talking about. Here's Diane, high smile line. I want to show you her case. High smile line, gummy smile, a lot of worn incisal edges. Let's take a bit of a deep dive. And this is how we do presentation at the aesthetic program. And this is how we think about kind of a way of systematizing what we're doing. So when you look at the form, there's a facial analysis part, dental facial, phonetic, dental, occlusal, incisal determination, and then we're waxing up. So the first thing is aesthetic evaluation form. We ask the patient if there was anything you can change about your smile, what would it be? And she says the shape, the way they look in general. Okay, gotcha. We keep probing, but basically what she said was everything. Then the second question is, if you could have the perfect smile, straight, white, perfect, or clean, healthy, natural. A lot of times I explain it, and I never say a third option. Straight, white, perfect, and everything's symmetrical, everything's right, or very natural, these perfect imperfections, what would you like? For the people who say, I like it one way or the other, great. But sometimes you have people say, well, I want them natural, but I want them white. And that's your third category. And that's a great way to do it because everybody's thinking left or right, very binary answers. Then you can introduce that third option. So this is how we look at interpupillary line and midline, commissural line, and we're looking at symmetry versus asymmetry. And it's actually quite symmetrical. We look at Ricketts E-plane. So when there's somewhat of a vertical dimension change, a lot of times you get, auto rotation of the mandible, a little overclosure, and you start getting that concave profile. When we get a concave profile, the concept is how do we build it out and down and get better eversion of those lips and support of the lips. Remember, the teeth support the lips like scaffolding. And so we're already thinking about that because it was a convex profile, the opposite way we think about downsizing the teeth, which would be the opposite of this. So let's take a look at the lips. It's average on the upper lip. The lower lip is full, looks great. You can see the exposure with the incisal ledge. You can see the amount of wear, and you can see a very high smile. All right, so we're starting to develop our thinking. We're going through our analysis. And basically, the fundamentals of aesthetics is our foundation. Understanding our fundamentals of aesthetics allows us to identify and visualize and choose. And the combination of the facial surface, the phonetic edge, and the palatal surface for occlusion all comes together here. Because when you have this much wear, the anterior coupling is missing. The wear in the front is going to cause problems in the back because there's what we all know about mutually protected occlusion, and the front teeth exclude the back teeth, and the back teeth, by definition, support the front teeth in a vertical direction. We call them verticalizing contact. So as we look at this, we go through our three-step analysis. We look at the patient. We see we have wear on the teeth. You can see she's missing a second molar, wear on the premolars. We're starting to think, well, there might be some compensatory eruption, possibly some loss of vertical dimension. But remember, we start with aesthetics. So using a little bit of flowable, there's the flowable on the left side. I start developing incisal ledge, bringing out a little bit, and putting the gum line where I want to put the gum line. If you look at the digital caliper, it says 10.5. There's an inviolate rule that I have learned that on a high smile line, you never want to go longer than 10.5 on the central incisal because the teeth will end up getting too big looking. And 10 to 10.5, and we know this from Markovitz's work, is about the length. In central incisal, it could be anywhere from 10 to 12, but 10 in balance high smile line, it works extremely well and very well balanced. So that's what we were looking at. That was our determination. And now we take a bite registration, and we were looking, a lot of times we'll take this incisal edge position, and if we're looking to change slightly to restore vertical dimension, we'll use this also as a Lucia jig. So it's a jig plus a feline. So we call it the feed jig to actually help set the registrations to now do your waxing. Okay, hope everybody got that. So our diagnostic wax up, we did this for the first step, which was to create a 3D printed model of a design. And this is straight digital smile design. This is Christian Coachman, Francis, his brother, and their whole team that have figured this out over the last 3-4 years and have built just an incredible help to us as aesthetic dentists. They now have it on an app that's AI driven. So please visit their website if you have a chance of DSD.com. But anyway, there's the template, and the template is basically central-lateral canine, premolars following the continuous curves, all the things we know about aesthetics, 3D printed model. And then we take that 3D printed model, what do? We make an index. Special way to do an index, but you're basically relining a silicon. And here she is. We mock it up. We put some type of composite resin, provisional material. Could be any of them. 3M Pro Temp, Integrity. And we have the mock-up. The mock-up goes in. We never show the patient a mirror. Never. We show them either on the big screen I have, or and that's me making a lot of noise. And she's looking at herself on the iPhone that I took pictures of her, and I have video of her, and I'm stopping the video along the way to show her what she could look like. Super excited. When do we begin? Then when she says, when do we begin? Now the real work starts, mounted model, diagnostic wax up, because we were restoring a little bit of vertical dimension and diagnostically waxing up the case. And I ended up we did the smile design digitally, as you can see, and then we did some of the occlusion from an analog perspective. So there is the smile design. We made a surgical stent because we were raising the gum line. We realized we hadn't raised the gum line. Remember, my flowable simulated that we were raising the gum line. As I put flowable over the gum line, I measured right to 10.5. Well, when we did the smile design, we knew exactly where it would go, surgical stent. Perio was done by Dr. Frank Solenzen, so well done. And then we have the final case. And here's our patient. It's very much like the mock-up. And here's the final. So we did occlusal rehabilitation, working on the teeth that we had to work on, improving overbite overjet. Here she is on a big smile, much improved Ricketts E-plane, and nasolabial angle and support. And that's Diane, that we did both from a digital and an analog perspective. But the excitement we create, the wow effect that Christian Coachman always talks about, was the motivational mock-up that came, though, from the ability to do a three-step analysis to identify the problem and then visualize where we're going to go using the feline of the incisor ledge. Let me show you another case. So meet
If you
Alyssa,
could have the perfect smile,
and here's
what
our
would
nav
it
bar
be?
at
What would
the
it
top.
look like?
Effective questions
We're talking
first.
Words,
Here's our
adjectives
system.
we were using. What we say?
Adjectives.
I'm asking her if you could have the
White.
perfect
White.
smile, what would it
Bigger
be?
teeth.
White
Bigger teeth.
Bigger
Where would
teeth.
you want bigger teeth?
The front.
in the
Yeah.
front. She wants bigger teeth.
Okay.
The gingiva
And how
is
about
kind
the
of
edge? We're gonna
covering
get rid of
the
some of
necks
that
of the teeth.
little bit of grayness you have at the edge.
Yes.
Right. Beautiful. And how about you thought that there was a little bit gummy, right? Raise
Yeah.
the gum line a little.
Too gummy for sure.
A little too gummy.
Yeah. Here.
Right. And how important is a smile for you?
Very important.
Why is it important?
Because I'm a model, so this is a moneymaker.
I love this line. She's a model, and it's her moneymaker. And the truth is, we're in the smile business, all of us. We're all in the smile business. We're in the best business we can have. We create beautiful smiles for our patients, and it's an exciting profession, especially today more than ever. So here she is laughing. But I want to show her what we're thinking. But first, we got to identify the problem. And we go through this nav bar. Facial analysis, basically the aesthetic evaluation form, facial analysis, dental facial, phonetic. It's in the book. Just copy them off. You could also make a digital version of it. But you can get to the point where you're going to determine the incisal edge position. So let me show you how we did that. First thing is through the facial aesthetics. We're looking into pupillary parallel lines. Great. Next, we're going to look to see midline. Is it centering? Next, lip at rest. How much tooth exposure? And she's got great tooth exposure. And then we look at nasolabial, and we look at Ricketts E-plane. A little bit concave, a little bit, but you can see the lip at rest pretty good with incisal edge position, right? Okay. Now we do phonetics.
At the end of, yeah, the end of
You want to see the incisal edge to the lower lip.
Say
And just run them through it, F and S, and make sure that the sounds are right and where's the incisal edge in relationship to the wet dry line. Is it the central's torqued in? Does she have a lot of lingual torque where maybe if she had better support and supported the lips better, they would have more of that voluminous, especially on women, more of a voluminous lips. So 3 to 4 millimeters incisal edge exposure is very good. But the teeth look small. The teeth look small because they're a little bit set back. And we saw that in the Ricketts E-plane. That was a concave profile. High smile line, and you can see what's happening here with the asymmetries. High smile line, convex curve, and not touching. Great. Let's keep going through the aesthetic evaluation form.
50,
51,
Here comes a little more
51,
phonetics.
52,
52,
53,
53.
I love using video because we can always go back to it, and I go over it with the technicians, with our surroundings.
61,
61.
62,
You can see the incisal edge
63,
position is quite good. but
64.
Torqued in a little bit. Okay. So here's the close-up, the dental view, and facial, dental. And we can see the asymmetry of tooth number 8, the asymmetry of 7 to 10, and all of a sudden we're saying to ourselves, all right, I kind of know what I want to do here. Also look at the papillas and look at the interproximal tissue. You can see how it's covering a lot of the teeth, making them look narrow and small. Right. So what are we going to do? We go through our evaluation form. Let's see if this is moving. Asymmetry. Good. And I like to draw a lot of times, so I'll either draw, or we have an iPad, or we have a digital smile design, and we start drawing exactly where I want to put the peak of the gingival seam on the centrals, and the central height slightly lower than the lateral, and of course, even with the canine to the central, and we use that for communication. For DSD, the requirements are 2 or 3 pictures today because it's very, very simple, and you scan the mouth, and you're connecting the dots between the face and the scanned models. So that's our DSD requirements. Here I am. We did this for an over-the-shoulder course that we did in my office with Christian, and that's his brother who's in Madrid, and it's when they had the Smile Design Center, less about the software that they have today, and we were designing it together, working together for our course. And here's the motivational mock-up. So from that design, digital smile design, from the templating of all the rules of aesthetics, of central lateral canine, hyperwidth ratios, natural tooth form, the beauty of digital is we're using natural tooth form, 3D print, and then we make this index. It's a reline silicone index, great technique to do it. And then you carve up, you sculpt and scallop exactly the CEJs so that there's very little.
Oh my God, there was talk about last night.
Here's Alyssa, because we used that in the case, and there she is with the mock-up. And you can see that the teeth are much simpler, much more dominant. And on video, it's so great when you have these mock-ups. If you look up what is that, they don't look like this because they're plastic. But if you lower that. But as you see from a video, and that's why we want to show patients video either on a screen or an iPhone, it becomes very, very dramatic, very powerful. We went ahead, we trimmed the tissue off of a surgical stent, which came off of our design, and then we then let the tissue heal, and we prep. Here's the prep. Here's tooth number 7. You can see the tissue's still a little inflamed, but now we have everything kind of lined up properly. And we took her from the preps to provisionals. Provisionals, as we know, is the functional dress rehearsal. We made a couple of tweaks, and a lot of times the smile design in the old days, they were a little bit too much support, and we found ourselves always just kind of slightly modifying that. Here's the final case with the ceramic veneers, nice dominance on the centrals, and she's was extraordinarily happy, and we had a very happy patient. And there's my pal Christian and Alyssa, fun case. So let me show you Rick, and we're doing great. I'm going to run through this, but I was telling Christian, I said, I don't know, Christian, I think my technicians do a better job with analog. I've seen CAD CAM, and I don't know, they don't have the life that I think we can get, and I really didn't meet great digital technicians at that time. This was 3 years ago. So this was 2 years ago. We did a course at NYU with Ken Beecham at CE, and Christian had the idea he's going to bring in 5 of the top CAD CAM technicians in the world for this course, and that's what we did. And here's Rick, who I met, and here he is right through the nav bar, effective questions, facial analysis, dental, determining the incisal ledge, symmetry versus asymmetry. And you can see Ricketts E-plane, concave profile. What does that tell you? You got to build out and out. And sure enough, because you don't have that lip support. And that's just a general thinking of where you're going to go. So here's Rick.
Change your smile, and kind of the story about
if you could change your smile.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, a long time ago, I had a really bad dentist that pulled out Sonny's teeth, and I developed a lot of self-consciousness about smiling, and it really affected me through high school and stuff like that. If I could change anything about my smile, it would just be to have a correct bite, so I stop wearing down the insides of my teeth, and for it just to look natural.
Beautiful. So clean, healthy, and natural.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
We established that, and you ask your patients the effective questions, and they tell you everything. We all know that, right? We all know that. Okay. So here's what he is with the lip at rest, showing a little bit over 1 millimeter, probably could show a little bit more, and we wanted to create a bit of an overbite, overjet as the biological model. Remember this number, 4 millimeters of overbite, 2 millimeters of overjet on the horizontal. That is our biological model. That's where we want to go to. So we did that with some flowable. Here he is, kind of a pseudo class 3. And as we look at that, we're going to do orthodontics, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You first got to visualize where we want to go and go backwards from it, because you could be moving teeth into position, you could be doing aligners, you could be doing aligners plus, restoring the tooth mass that got lost from the grinding. So it depends. But we start the same way. We determine the fee line, which is the functional aesthetic edge. And this is where we're also using this aesthetic edge for also a vertical dimension position, okay? Because he is so pseudo class 3. He kind of auto-rotated the mandible because he's missing some back teeth and spacing. And so we use this technique with flowable. We got him to about 11 millimeters of length. He didn't have a high smile line. And then we build out the overbite overjet. And there you see the overbite overjet, and we take a registration at that vertical dimension, which we are looking to get overbite overjet. And that's how we figure out our vertical. We wax from there. We do our digital smile design so that we can have a 3D printed model to show the patient, to get them excited, that wow result. Then once they say, yes, I'm excited, now the hard work begins. I'll say that 1,000 times because now we really got to figure things out. Here's the smile design, great from the templating. This was based on the aesthetic of owl form and kind of the shapes, these very natural tooth forms. You could look at the laterals and how they're kind of sloped in so beautifully and big, great mesial line angles. The software that they were employing, and this is what we did this in Madrid with Francis Coachman, Christian's brother, who ran the Smile Design Center. We also were setting up the occlusion on the virtual articulator. So there's the virtual articulator in the face, very interesting. And here's the mock-up. And there we are in the course, and there's that beautiful smile. To show you what we can do with smile donators, and these are natural tooth forms from the library, I used my pal Lenny Kravitz's smile because he's got a great smile. Who doesn't love Lenny Kravitz? And we said, oh, what's that going to look like? So we wanted to show the people in the course how we can literally transfer a smile. So we can take a young woman, 25 years old, and their mother's 62, wants to get a reconstruction. She loves her smile. And we could literally scan it, and we could mock it up in the mouth, and that could be the forecasting for the provisional and, of course, then the final. So very exciting with digital dentistry, digital workflow. Here's the vertical dimension position. We put PMMA provisionals to set the posterior occlusion. And then for the course, we did the preparations, wrapped around as much minimal tooth structure as possible. Here's the design. So here's from the virtual articulator, and you can see what exactly done, but you're basically scanning. So we scanned that and we took impressions. So we had both. We had 5 technicians there. I'll introduce you to the 5 technicians because each technician was going to use a different technique of CAD/CAM. Emax, zirconium, different levels of zirconium, layered. So it was really cool. So here's the virtual articulator. Let me keep rocking here. And here's the provisionals. On the lower for the course, I set up kind of a mock-up from the virtual articulator just so I can set lower incisal edge position, so I can set the overbite overjet. And the technicians were just doing the upper veneers. There were about 8 veneers. And then I finished his lower at a later time for him. So here's the provisionals, and here's the direct mock-up. That's all plastic on the lower also. That's just provisional. And we're creating the overbite overjet. This is Rick. Here's the CAD/CAM. Let me introduce you to of course, there's CAD/CAM. This is video from Andre Acevedo, one of the technicians who's from Spain. Here's Mark Dixon here from New York. He was here. Rafael Sandrich, incredibly talented ceramist out of Miami, who does the scoop technique. Antonio Corradini, who did zirconia beautifully. He did it a couple different ways, and he did some of his own shapes. And Andre Acevedo, another super talented. So Christian brought all these guys over. I tried in all 5 sets. And the most amazing thing was that Rick, the patient, was listening in the back of the room because we didn't know who we were going to insert. Dixon, Corradini, Andre Acevedo, or Sandrich. And sure enough, when he heard the most natural was Rafael Sandrich's with the scoop technique, that's what we used. And here's the scoop technique with beautiful texturing and incisal edge. They scooped the back of the Emax and they put color, and then they bake some porcelain to close it up. You see incredible special effects at the incisal edge. Just beautiful. Incredible technician. So there he is with plastic on the lower, final provisional, final veneers on the upper. Decided to to cement Raphael's. There he is. Rick's super happy. He's a great chef. I get to see him number of different ways. So when you just to kind of wrap this up, and I want to leave a couple of minutes, there's some clinical takeaways that I want us to think about. Aesthetics and functions, they work together. We say they're two sides of the same coin. They're integrated. So our Smile Design book is all about the integration of aesthetics and function. That's the title. It's Smile Design, but integration of aesthetics and function. They're integrated through the feline because that's where the linkage, the convergence of the aesthetic edge and phonetic edge and the palatal surface all comes together. That's where diagnosis starts. We start with the incisal edge, then we follow with the structure, function, and biology. The three-step analysis allows us to identify where we are. It's exactly what we learned 40 years from Dawson, 30, 40 years ago. You visualize where you want to go. Exactly. If I know where I am and if I know where I want to go, getting there is easy, in the words of Pete Dawson. And now we have a systematic approach to diagnose. We created an aesthetic evaluation form that really allows us in a checklist in a very easy manner, really, because it's seamless. And you do the same thing. You go facial, dental, you determine your gingival margin, incisal edge, and the length of your tooth. It helps you then facilitate your treatment plan. It is necessary, of course, for us to really consistently and constantly keep building on our fundamentals and focus on our fundamentals. Because whether you're doing an analog or digital, at the end of the day, that's what works. What digital is going to do is going to make us more efficient. The digital revolution, Smile Design. I do more aligners in my office and orthodontics than ever before because it becomes so well integrated. It's not like I'm sending a patient somewhere and I don't see the patient for a few months and we don't have great communication. Communication is maximized because the digital workflow is all under one roof. So it creates efficiency and effectiveness. Of course, there is a learning curve of the workflow. But for us, we always want to constantly be learning and challenging ourselves. I think that's what it's all about. Here I am in my 6th decade, and I'm more excited about dentistry than ever before. And I do other things, but everything does connect in my world and keeps me very excited.
Let's make believe a stranger is on an elevator with you and asks, what do you do for a living? It's up to you to know how to respond. You may say, I'm a dentist, or you may say, I transform people's lives by bringing their most beautiful smile to life. Together, we will help inspire our profession to meet the needs of the 21st century, challenge the status quo, to drive disruption and reinvention.
So I show you that because I was very honored to do the commencement at BU in 2017. But I think it's something for all of us to think about in our profession, to adopt this creative mindset where we're constantly reinventing what we do and we get better and better at what we do. It keeps things fresh. It keeps us excited about the profession that we've spent so much time and effort to become experts. So thank you so much for having me here. Adam, I'm going to wrap on that. And thank you. And if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, Jonathan at jblnyc.com. Of course, we're on the internet, and that Dr. John Levine is my is Instagram. Okay. Let me escape that.
Awesome. All right. Well, we have about 10 minutes left if anyone has any questions for Dr. Levine. I actually have one. So you shared a couple of cases with us. Is there like an average timeline in terms of duration for a case like that you showed us?
Yeah, depending on the case, because if it's most of the work is done up front, right? Let's talk about kind of a very straightforward aesthetic, and you're figuring out incisal edge position, but the structure, function, and biology is good, it's strong, and you figured that out. And then it's showing the patient, getting them excited. It's then making sure your wax up works from an occlusal standpoint, overbite, overjet, proper disclusion, mutually protected occlusion, all these things that we hold very dear for the fundamentals of occlusion. But then it's prepping, provisualizing, and of course with veneers we do something called the APT technique, and we put the mock-up back in and we prep that and we do minimally invasive dentistry, take impressions, or usually we take custom tray impressions plus scans so the technicians have both. Patients come back with the provisionals in, and that's the dress rehearsal. And we're videotaping them in the provisionals. We're talking about color and size of ledge position. I didn't really cover that much, but that is the time to really go to school on these provisionals. So it's 2 long appointments of the provisional side and then the insert, but it's bookended by the diagnostic work, information gathering up front, and the interviewing when they have the provisionals, which is this information flow that started from day one. The first question we ask, which is, if you could change your smile, what would it be? And then put them into this classification of straight, white, perfect, or clean, healthy, natural. So that's the simple ones. The more complicated ones is whether we have implants, vertical dimension changes, and biological issues, because that's what moves cases out. In those cases, if you're doing implants, you're adding about 4 to 6 months to the cases, depending on, how many implants and all of that. You're dealing with periodontics, and healing, that's about 6 to 8 weeks. So it really depends on the level of the case. But what's interesting for everybody to know is we do the same system and process for diagnostic, whether it's simple and straightforward or if it's complicated. And that's, I think, the beauty of this checklist and this approach of a 3-step analysis, because it allows you to just do that foundational thinking, identify, visualize, and choose the appropriate technique.
Then we had a question. How long is your consultation appointment? Do you do the quick flowable that same day to get an idea of where you plan to go?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, it's all about building rapport, as we know. And so we have kind of that rapport building session and really trying to understand the needs of the patient and asking some effective questions. But from there, we're going for information gathering. So we're going through our aesthetic evaluation form. And I've been doing it this way for 25 years, I got to tell you. And I want to determine the incisal ledge, and flowable is just a great way with the digital caliper. Don't take away my digital caliper, don't take away my flowable, and don't take away my red pencil, because that's how I know what my margins are. So on provisionals. So you can really determine right up front that information, but then the patient's coming back for them to then see themselves in both a motivational mock-up, or let's just say it's a straight occlusion case, and you're not really dealing with, you're maybe changing posterior crowns, or maybe you're doing aligners. But, so there's that second appointment where you're going to show the patient what you're coming up with from a standpoint of identify, then visualize, because you want the patient to see what you're talking about. And then you work backwards and you choose the most appropriate technique to get there. And then in the appropriate technique, it's all transdisciplinary. It's all the way from orthodontics to periodontics to implantology to prosthodontics to whatever disciplines you need to converge to get to that patient to that high level, to the level they want to get to. And for us, that all happens in the rapport building up front. So the short answer to the question is I spend at least a half hour, 20 minutes, a half hour just talking to the patient and understanding their mindset and where they're at and their history and where they've come from, because that's going to help me set things up.
Great. Well, that's all I got for you. No other questions have come in. So thank you for your presentation. And of course, thank you to everyone for attending tonight's webinar. If you have additional questions pertaining to this topic, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dr. Levine, or you can email us at webinars@henryschein.com. As a thank you for attending, we will be sending out a link of today's recording in the coming week via email. On behalf of Henry Schein, I'd like to once again extend a thank you to Dr. Levine, and I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you so much, John. My pleasure. So long, everybody.